let's dive in the deep end and first tell all the people who are looking at this, aside from your many achievements, academic and otherwise, you're a Renaissance man. Football, soccer, you sing, you have an album, you've done just about everything. By training, you are an accountant and a lawyer. Who is Linton Lewis, separate from all of that? Who essentially is this man that we're looking at?
Well, someone who was very concerned about life, not necessarily his own life in general, and the way people exist, why they do things, the way they do them, and see whether or not I can find something deeper than what I see on the surface. There's always an explanation for everything that a person does. A person is how that person is socialized. And some people are disciplined enough to be able to develop within themselves that sort of control and that discipline and determination, dedication, commitment to things outside the way in which you were socialized. Some environments, some communities may not lend itself to positive thinking or critical thinking, but you always find the exception to the rule. Someone who thinks that he or she should be far more, look beyond the horizon, far broad in their thinking, and develop that discipline to do so. But you don't find everyone being like that. And the question is this, is that why sometimes our societies are like that? Hence the reason for me when I write on things like meritocracy, I write on things like democracy, I write on things like constitutional reform, mainly because I think that they have a lot to do with who we are as individuals and how we conduct ourselves. And the type of person that I am, I think it has a lot to do with how I saw myself as a young person, things that I believed in. Those are positive things, in music, in sports, in drama, in education. And if you foster that sort of awareness at a very early age, and then you engage and you get yourself involved in them, after some time they become habitual.
So what explains your life? What explains all of what you've just said there? What prompted you to do that? What caused Linton Lewis to become the person he is, or to do all the things that you've done?
I think success, for the most part, breeds success. First, I think I also had an ability, a sporting ability, in football and in cricket. And so at a very early age, by 16, 17, I was representing the country in both sports. And I think after that, I started traveling, started recognizing the talent that I had within myself, and realized that I can go further. And so the motivation was there. As a young boy, I learned very early to play the steel band, and I wanted to play it properly. So therefore, that I had to practice to do so. I wanted to become a good footballer, a good cricketer. I had to practice to do so. So it meant that I had to make sacrifices. In addition to that, as I grew older, I recognized a few things. I thought, well, I'm a young person at the time, and if I sacrifice 4 or 5 years of my life to make my life better for 40 years, then it is a very small sacrifice to make. And with that sort of mental orientation, I was able to look beyond the present, at the time, challenges that I was experiencing, and focus more on not only the future, but on the success, what happens after I've been successful. So my mind has never been on failure when it came to myself. It has always been, what will I do after I have been successful? And that was the driving force behind me.
So you had a vision.
Vision at a very early age, yes.
What is your mission, or what has been your mission? Has your mission changed over the decades, over the years, as you did law, as you did accounting, as you went through the sports, as you played pan, as you became a politician, an entrepreneur? Did your mission, you had your vision,
Yes.
And the mission, I suppose, was based on the vision?
Yes, it is. You see, as I said, success breeds success, and you're motivated. Things sometimes won't always go well, but you think about the good things in life. You don't focus on the things that really depress you and frustrate you. You think about the achievements, the things that you have accomplished, no matter how small they are, when you're going through these challenging experiences. And I think that they help to motivate you and to reduce the depressive experiences, or at the time, the frustrations at the time. And so I focus mostly on what can I do, what I have the aptitude for certain things. Am I able to do them? Should I focus on accomplishing those rather than concentrating on whatever failures I may have had? And so when you think of life that way, you become self-disciplined and you're motivated. Because if you are positive as an individual, automatically positive things come within you in your mindset. You think about positive things and you are aware of what happens around you. You're always there multitasking. Mentally, you're seeing things around you and you're making a choice because you have the platform that can take you into different directions. And so you think, which direction do I have to go in? The problem is that some people who are extremely talented, when they reach a spaghetti junction, making that choice as to where they should go can be a very difficult task because they can go anywhere. And sometimes the choices that they make, that they consider to be beneficial or advantageous, in the end, they may not turn out that way. But I think that so far, even entering politics, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a bad choice. I was teaching at the University of Durham at one time in England. I came back and I entered politics. And to the extent that I am regretful of that choice, it's mainly because I have not been able to make the level of contribution that I wanted to make.
Was politics your great leveler in that sense? You did well at football, you did well at cricket, you did well at singing, you did well at everything you put your hands to. But you were defeated in politics as a campaigner, as a representative. Was that your toughest opponent then? Was that your toughest lesson, politics?
Not. It was a lesson in understanding people, going beyond the surface. That is where I learned the lesson.
What did you learn?
That sometimes people, even though you know that people are not what they appear to be, then actually realizing it, seeing it, being a part of it is a different thing altogether. It's like seeing something on television and then you say, oh, that place is very nice, and you're going to live that experience is something totally different.
So what's your advice to young people, Caribbean people, Vincentians, people who are listening to this, who are looking for an answer to life? What do you tell them, given that experience that you've had?
Well, I think that there are greater opportunities now for one to get an academic qualification. And academic qualification, not all, but for one to be able to get a skill, which is very important. And I think the first focus should be on very quickly trying to ascertain where your strengths are. Do a self-assessment. And everyone knows, because sometimes that information comes to you easily. I am strong at this, I'm strong at that. And then you can follow that strength and follow that, no matter what it is. Once it's positive, you can excel at whatever it is and do far better than another person who traditionally may have qualifications that people may gravitate to and respect. For example, you can be an extremely good mechanic or extremely good plumber or extremely good carpenter or builder, and you can do far better than a lawyer or even a doctor.
So is this where we should be going? When you look at, I just looked at an article that said many billionaires dropped out of university. Google, we look at all the top billionaires in the world, most recognized, dropped out. Bill Gates dropped out. And so there's this shift now where I think there's a realization that academia is not all it's chalked up to be, and that there are people who, just as you say, have skills, raw skills. They were born with these skills. As the Caribbean seeks to evolve, is this something that a way of life that we should probably look at, where we focus on who we are? As I said, that's why I started out asking, who are you, Linton Lewis? Focus on who you are and look at the skills you have as an indication of that.
I think Caribbean people, I think we're very exceptional. We're mixed in many respects. We have the benefit of the genes of all of us. You have the Caucasian, you have the Amerindian, you have the Negroes. So we're very fortunate in that respect. However, the problem has to do with size, and I'm writing a book on that sometime soon, the realities of size. The problem of size is something that does not go away from us. For example, in St. Vincent, the population is small. Relatively speaking, 100,000 people. It means that, to me, it frustrates innovation. Because even if you are innovative, the market isn't there to encourage you to be able to benefit in any major way from what you have developed. And if you develop something that can be easily replicated, then you find everybody is doing so. The market now becomes so large. You find that the demand is there, but the market isn't large enough to be able to satisfy all those producers and suppliers of that one thing. So, for example, if you put it simply, you put a nice stall and you set it out very nicely in a certain part of the country, and you're selling mangoes and soursops and those things, and people seem to like them, they come here to buy. And someone sees that you're doing well. Within 2 months, you'll have 5 or 6 other persons doing that. And the market is very small. If you decide to sit down and think about something that is scientific, technological, and you develop it, no matter how small, the encouragement is not really going to be there so much unless it is spotted by someone from another country where the population is much larger, and then they decide to take you into that country or to promote that for you in that country. And promotion, as you know, can be very expensive. So we are restricted, limited in many respects. So you can develop things, but you have to have the facility, financial and otherwise, to be able to promote it and to advertise it and to get into the markets that count. I think that in itself is a great restriction, and therefore it doesn't encourage people to be very innovative.
So what do we do?
It's a very difficult thing. I think what we do is that we try to find linkages. We try to put ourselves into the technological age. And you have certain social media platforms, and you try your best as soon as possible to get up to date on how you project things, how you project yourself, how you advertise yourself, and look beyond the Caribbean market, look beyond the country in the Caribbean, because we do the same things. Our economies are based on the same things. Tourism, for the most part. Some of them financial services. So they're very delicate. And with one sweep, hurricane or some sort of legislation brought in by the OECD countries can create a tremendous amount of problem for these economies. You have agriculture that's been so very delicate and fragile. You can have drought, you can have a hurricane, there may be challenges with respect to shipment, and you have competition from other countries with similar climate and so on. So it is not an easy thing, and you are a small island. And therefore you'll find that sometimes, even if you're enthusiastic as an entrepreneur, even though you're enthusiastic as someone who thinks that you want to explore and to develop, and when you think about those things, after some time, if you don't have someone there to help you from the metropolis, it can be very, very problematic.
We are both in Taiwan. This interview is being conducted in Taipei, the capital. We have a relationship with Taiwan, that is St. Vincent and the Grenadines and 4 other Caribbean territories. What does that mean? The fact that we are here, both in different capacities, and I live here, you've been visiting for an extended period, and we're both engaged in different activities. There are many students from St. Vincent here studying in various areas. What does that represent for what you're talking about, innovation and the way forward for our little tiny country and similar countries in the Caribbean?
Well, Taiwan is, if not in the top 5, it's certainly in the top 10 for producers of certain technological products, computers and computer chips and so on. It is a giant, a trading giant. It's about number 17, I think, in the world for use of trade. I think its economy is about 34th. It has the world's 4th largest foreign currency reserves. It is indeed a very important economic ally. There are lots of things that we can learn from Taiwan. Our students are given the opportunity to see another side of the world. You are very far away, and it's a totally different culture. Although what I've seen here is very Americanized, but it's in the East, and things are done sometimes differently. People's minds are wired differently. So it means that in interacting and relating, that you learn how to change and to modify your approach to things to be able to relate effectively and to ensure that you can forge this very good relationship with them. Now, that is from a personal perspective, but there are historical similarities in that we in the Caribbean came to certain struggles, even with our indigenous people fighting against the French, fighting against the British. Here in Taiwan, the indigenous people have done the same. You heard of the Mutan incident for the Japanese. They fought against the Americans. They fought against the Dutch. They fought against the Chinese. And so you've had the same type of historical evolution here in Taiwan, very similar to that in the Caribbean, in St. Vincent. And the mindset as island people will be very similar. It is weird that you realize that you can sometimes be a bit introvert bordering on what you call, what we say that you, insularity. That happens automatically. But you are able to relate as island people much more easily. And I think that our students here will find that notwithstanding the cultural differences or the differences in which certain things have been done, they would be able to settle here very quickly. And in an environment that is not dissimilar. The only big difference here, which is helpful to Taiwan, is that it's a population of 23 million people. And that has its challenges, but it also has its benefits from an economic perspective. And but you also have to work hard. It sort of increases the competition when you have 23 million people. And so you find that people rise to the top because they have to fight and work hard to get there. The relaxed approach is not as relaxed as you may find in the Caribbean and in St. Vincent. And you will also see that here in Taiwan, you may have opportunities being created for you specifically in the technological industries. And the way the world is going, we in the Caribbean, in St. Vincent, we need to come to terms with that level of development. And I'll tell you why also. We are small. Communication is extremely important. Everything is about communication. No matter what you produce, it's about communication. It's about transport. It's about promotion. It's about advertisement. It is getting your message out there. It is letting people know what you have to sell and what you need to buy. And if you are in a position where you can communicate effectively, then what happens is that you are on your way, at least, to get your message across, whether in tourism, whether in financial services, whether in agriculture. You tap on that market. You make yourself very unique in a certain area, whether in the packaging, whether in the producing, whether in the way that you actually advertise, but you have to find a niche in the world that can accommodate your, what do you call, your limitations.
Are we doing that with Taiwan? Are we exploring those possibilities and those avenues?
We may be, but I think having come to Taiwan, there is a lot more that we can do in our relationship. It is true that we have about almost 100 students here. To me, when you look at things, it may cost about $8 million to have them here in Taiwan, to educate them. Because Taiwan, that amount of money. And then you have a situation in which some of them go on and do postgraduate degrees, and they get assistance to do so. It was very heartening to see some people like yourselves who live in Taiwan, married and living here, who speak the language fluently. And so there are a number of things, if we look at things carefully, how we establish and maintain and promote and continue our relationship will depend on the sort of mutual benefits that we can have from each other. And in this case, to the extent where this is a highly technologically developed country, we have to think about how can we tap on that. We have to think about the future. How can we have our people trained in certain areas to develop our own little Silicon Valley eventually?
We have to decide what it is we need.
Yes.
Yes. And nobody can decide, as Bob Marley says,
yes,
none but ourselves can free our minds. There we go.
And then so we need to first and foremost not think negatively, but in order to be able to develop, we need to know our own limitations.
You are at an exciting point in your life, I think. You have got so much of a foundation in various fields, and now you are an author. Is that where your focus is? What is Linton Lewis doing today? What is your focus today?
My focus is the same focus I've always had, making a contribution, either to my country or to the region or to the world.
Are you making more of a contribution to the world now, would you say?
Well, I think that I am trying to do so. Some time ago I wrote a book called A Theory of Proximity in International Law, which gave a slightly different perspective to other authors on international law. It's about 600 pages that should be published, and I'm trying to get from other publishers permission to use certain of the works of the authors. And very much in the same way that when St. Vincent was going to introduce VAT, I wrote extensively about that to educate the people. When the ECCB was about to introduce a stock exchange, I wrote in the Eastern Caribbean area, in all those islands, in the newspapers every week about money and financial markets. When, for example, you had a constitutional reform in St. Vincent, I wrote extensively on that. So it is always about, education. Once a teacher, always a teacher. Now, in our relationship with Taiwan, it behoved me some years ago to try and understand Taiwan. Why is it called the Republic of China on Taiwan, because it didn't make sense, because there's a People's Republic of China. And I thought perhaps I need to look into things a bit more. It got my interest. The Chinese history is very interesting. It evolved out of a lot of sad stories of war and famine, and even the Chinese Civil War, with 8 million people died. We can't conceptualize 8 million because we only have 100,000, but there's a lot of people. And so I sort of got myself involved in the history and enjoyed the history. And then I had a very good understanding of why there is a Republic of China on Taiwan. Then it dawned on me that, notwithstanding the fact that Taiwan seemed to have done so well economically, it still is not recognized as a member. It is still not given the opportunity to become a member of the United Nations. And St. Vincent is so small. We are an independent state. The question is whether or not Taiwan is a state. So my inquiry led me into that direction. And I came here, visiting a scholar at the National Taiwan University. I'm also a research fellow at the Center for Chinese Studies, here brought by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I came here,
Taiwan.
Of Taiwan. I came here on the 15th of August to research and to write. And I got so immersed in it that I found myself being exposed to the materials that I really want at my disposal, and that even motivated me a lot more, to the extent where I was able to finish, to complete that. I've written that about 120,000 words in the end, when I've put the conclusion and the introductory chapters together, but the book is finished and I'm editing it. And I think that when you like what you do, and when you find interest in what you do, then it becomes much more easy. The book really is about demonstrating, justifying the status of Republic of China on Taiwan. A number of persons would write about Taiwan, the island Taiwan. I wrote about the Republic of China on Taiwan, because as I understand it, the Republic of China on Taiwan exists. And because it exists, then it must have been recognized years ago when it was a member of the United Nations. Under Article 110, sub 3 of the United Nations Charter, the ROC, the Republic of China, is mentioned as a founding member of the United Nations. And pursuant to Resolution 2758, by some strange mechanism or misfortune, the Republic of China was expelled and the People's Republic of China was admitted.